Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Camilla, I can see you. I can't hear you yet.
Hi, Sally.
So we're just putting you in spotlight. Welcome, Camilla. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
I think
My pleasure.
You're on mute, Camilla.
I'm on mute. No, I'm not. Can you not hear me?
Oh, hang on. I know I can't hear you.
Yeah, that helps.
Sorry. It's so lovely to see you in person. I don't need to do a big introduction because I think you will do that yourself. But Camilla Sherr is over in Tanzania. She helped to set up Homeopathy for Health Africa. She also teaches at Dynamis. She teaches homeopathy. But what's incredibly exciting is that she is working with plants and the soil. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about your work, because we know that the soil is so vitally important for us to get decent nutrients into our food. And we also know that over the last, I don't know, a few decades, we've been using an awful lot of things on the soil that kill everything that is going to help us. So this is Camilla Sherr, everybody. Take it away, Camilla.
Okay, thank you, Sally. That's great. Okay, well, lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me to talk. I feel very passionate about this subject. So without further ado, let's get started. Can you see my PowerPoint? I believe that you can. Okay, so yes, so as Sally said, agri-homeopathy is, I think it's incredibly exciting, and I'm going to be sharing with you what I know and what I have learned in the past sort of 10 years or so that I've been using it, and let's have a look if it's something that we can actually do on a larger scale. If you guys get excited, we can share the knowledge, and yeah, I hope you'll be as excited as I am. So just a few words about agri-homeopathy. So it is the specialized area of homeopathy that is used to treat plants, and it is relatively new. It's only about 10 to 15 years old, and it started in Australia, and where a guy called Kaviraj had incredible success in treating all sorts of things, and he was so successful that homeopathy was actually banned by agrochemical companies in agriculture, which is of course completely crazy when we know that in homeopathic remedies there's hardly nothing in them, so how can that be then so harmful? Basically, the way it works, it is that in the same way as homeopathy works in humans and in animals, in that it strengthens the immune system. So with a strong immune system, a strong plant, they are much more resilient and resistant against all sorts of viruses and also insect infestations. The other bonus thing with homeopathy is that it's incredibly friendly, of course, environmentally. So because we use such small dosages, it doesn't have any impact on nature. And there are no sort of harmful residual levels of anything that can be harmful for our plants or the soil or or the water systems or anything like that. So basically, I'm going to show you how by using homeopathy in gardens and farms, we can use less herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, fungicides, and phosphates. And we all know that those are total killers for the earth. And other bonuses of homeopathy, agri-homeopathy, is of course that it's completely non-toxic, chemical-free, 100% safe, very sustainable, and also very affordable. So when we look at health, we're used to looking at human health, perhaps, or I was used to looking at human health, maximum a little bit animal health. But the truth is that environmental health connects with those two things. And all of these things together come together as something called One Health. And if you Google One Health, you will find a lot of things on Instagram, in the internet, about this whole new concept of looking at things and seeing how everything affects everything else. So it's super important that obviously what we eat has a massive impact on our health. And if we just look at the rise in cancers, for example, we have to kind of draw conclusions that at least partly the food that we eat is responsible for all of these diseases that are very rampant these days. So let's quickly just have a look at homeopathy. I don't know if you guys know what it is, but let's just look at the 4 principles of homeopathy so that you have a basic understanding of what it is. The first one being similarity. Homeopathy is based on a law, like cures like, what can cause can cure. And this is our first principle. The second one is totality, meaning that we always treat the largest possible totality of symptoms. So we don't just treat in humans, let's say we don't just treat the headache, we treat the whole person. We use minimum dosages. This means that we use the smallest possible amount of a substance to make a change. And this diluting and succussing of the original substance is called potentization. We also treat the individual person, respecting the individuality. We don't treat the disease. We say, okay, 2 people with the same disease, let's say diabetes, will get different remedies because they will manifest the disease differently. So these are the 4 principles of homeopathy. I live in Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, in East Africa, and like I said, this is where I have accumulated most of my knowledge in treating plants with homeopathy. So about 10 years ago, a coffee farmer came to me and she said that she wants us to help her farm with homeopathy during the conversion process while they go from organic to chemical. And this woman is German, so she was well versed in homeopathy. And indeed, since 2011, that's what we've done. Homeopathy for Health in Africa, which is the NGO Sally mentioned earlier, is my husband Jeremy and my organization that we started in 2009, and we have been treating this coffee farm very successfully since then. So what kind of things can we treat with agri-homeopathy? I will share with you my experiences, my personal experiences, the results that I've been getting, and also some research on the subject. Let's start with soil. Like Sally was just saying, soil is obviously the beginning and end of it all. And there's a lot of concern about Earth's soil at the moment. Everybody knows that it's been, degrading, and it keeps degrading more and more. They say 33% of Earth's soil is already degraded. They expect it to go up to 90% by 2050. This 33% is a little bit questionable depending on where you search your information from. In some places they say 70%. It depends a little bit what we understand by degrading. Is it just erosion, or is it other things as well? The main causes for this degradation is one of the main causes is agriculture. It's huge. Unsustainable agricultural practices are a massive reason about the soil deteriorating. And in fact, there are areas where the soil has become literally dead, like there's nothing in it anymore. It's been so over-treated, over-chemicalized, over-pesticide. It's just dying, basically. So, and this is sort of, agriculture and agricultural chemical companies are huge. They are like the big pharma of agriculture, and they make massive profits. And it's almost like all these fertilizers and fungicides and pesticides, they've been for the soil what antibiotics have been to the human body in the last 50 years or so, more by now, 70 years or so. And what we see in human bodies, we also see on the earth and on the soil. Antibiotics, they just don't work anymore. And people are becoming resistant to them, and our bodies are very unwell. The amount of chronic disease that is rise, and children getting chronic disease much younger than ever, and the soil now being it needing more and more higher and higher doses, quantities of agrochemicals in product, crops. They are kind of parallel. So the same thing is happening on both levels, and it's incredibly worrying. Now, I'm telling you a little story that is a backstory to something that happened. So there's a homeopathy project in Swaziland, and a good friend of mine, Barbara Brown, runs it. And they were contacted by a local school that has about 2,000, 3,000 kids in it, and they wanted them to come and teach them, treat them with homeopathy. The kids were from very poor conditions and malnourished, and with all sorts of problems and issues. But Barbara, unfortunately, she couldn't go because there were only three homeopaths in the project, so it was impossible for them to do. The volume was just too big. So instead, what she did is she made 2 remedies. She made one with potentized water-soluble vitamins, and another one with potentized fat-soluble vitamins. And she gave these vitamins to those kids. And to her major surprise, she saw that the majority of all of these children's ailments, what was troubling them, they just disappeared. So I had this knowledge somewhere in the back of my head. And when this Tanzanian coffee farmer, she came to me and she said, Camilla, I have some deficiencies in the soil. She would always do soil testing, so she knew. So the question became, can we do the same for the soil that Barbara did to these kids in Swaziland? Can we give the soil the vitamins and the minerals and the macronutrients and the micronutrients that it needs in a homeopathic potentized form, and will that work? So we tried. So the farmer, she took a soil sample, she analyzed soil, she got a list of macro and micronutrients that the soil is deficient in, and then we made boom, 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 we put everything together, we made a remedy out of it, and she watered the earth with this dilution. So first she analyzed, then we added what's missing in a homeopathic form. We put in a 12C potency, if some of you are homeopaths, and because that's what we had. And then she analyzed it again 1 month later. And lo and behold, the soil was completely balanced. There were no deficiencies anymore. So since then, we've been doing this, and it's completely amazing. I mean, this actually is a game changer, you know, this alone, never mind treating infections and bugs and funguses or whatever. This alone is huge, because I believe that the fact that these remedies are in a homeopathic form, meaning that they've been potentized, meaning that there is a frequency, there's a vibration in the homeopathic calcium, potassium, nitrates, phosphates. It's alive, it's vibrating. So we're putting life into the earth. And I find it incredibly exciting. I think it's completely brilliant that this can be done. Can you imagine if we can just replace phosphates with phosphorus? We will have no pollution, no lakes overgrowing. I mean, we can actually save this planet. It's so fabulous. So as well as that, we can actually detox the earth using homeopathy. So in Brazil, they did a study, because in Brazil, there's a big problem where they have a lot of aluminium in the soil. And they tried to see, they did a study where they used homeopathic alumina, which is aluminium, and calcium carbonicum. And then they wanted to see what would happen. Okay. So here you can already see the homeopathic principle in action, the like with like. So there's too much aluminium in the soil. Let's treat it with aluminium in potency. So they had 6 different Petri dishes. They had seeds, and they had aluminium in 2 different potencies, 6 and 12, calcarb in 6 and 12, and then they had two control groups with just talc and distilled water, and 1 seeds without any pelleting. And this is what happened. So these are all lettuce seeds. So on the top, you can see calcarb, 6C and 12C, and underneath, alumina, 6C and 12C. And the white here in the photos is the roots, okay? So here on the left, you can see C and F, which are the control groups, where you can see that almost nothing has happened. Whereas these ones that have been treated homeopathically, they are growing much, much, much more. I mean, it's visual to the eyes to see. Isn't that interesting? I find it very, very interesting. So as a result, they saw there was a significant positive difference in germination rate and the germ length between the samples treated with homeopathy and the control groups. By the way, when I show you the research, I'm going to have all the links at the end, and I believe that you'll be getting this presentation, I think. So you can have a look at the researches yourself at your own leisure to see the details if you're interested. So as well as treating the soil, we can treat the seeds. So we can affect the germination and the root growth. So that's very exciting, isn't it? So here's another research where they treated these mung beans with arnica and thuja. And what they did is that they exposed the mung beans to some fungal infection, okay, prior. And that's why they added the thuja, because it's a very good antifungal remedy. So they wanted to see if they could increase the germination and how they could resist the pathogens if there was any effect. So, oops, I'm missing the result. No, sorry, the result is here. So what happened is that the result showed that the ones that were treated with arnica and thuja, they showed a complete germination. So they had 100% germination percentage, which is amazing because, you know, even if you buy a bag of seeds from a garden center, really often not all of them germinate at all. So, and it even says on the package, you know, germination rate. So they will say there's an 80% germination rate or 70% germination rate. These ones, it was 100. And they found that there was a longer root length and excellent inhibitory ability to resist the pathogens in the roots. So very promising indeed. The other thing that we can affect homeopathy is to increase flowering. So, so this is, of course, great for any gardener who just has, you know, flowers in there on the balcony, or even if you just have a bunch of flowers in your house. If you put arnica in the water, your flowers will stay better, like they will stay good for another 5 days. It's really quite spectacular. So, and the way I saw it concretely was in this coffee plantation that I'm treating. So the farmer, she phoned me one day and she said, Camilla, there's a complete catastrophe. The coffee bushes, they'd been flowering, they had flowered, and suddenly there was a massive storm and a very strong wind, and all the flowers they just fell off the bushes. So she's like, oh my God, we're going to lose the whole crop because there were just a few flowers left. So I said, look, theoretically, there's something that we can do with homeopathy, but I don't know. I've never tried it myself. So she said, never mind, let's give it a go. You know, I've got nothing to lose. So I gave her phosphorus 12C, and she sprayed the whole area. And a couple of months later, she phones me and she says, Camilla, I have a problem. Now, what happened is that she had such an amazing flowering after the phosphorus that the coffee produced so many berries that it was what's called overbearing. She said to me, Camilla, it's like a woman, she's pregnant with twins. And then she gives birth to the twins and she's completely blah. She's absolutely on the floorboard. She's exhausted. All her power, all her energy has gone into producing these babies. And the same thing is now with the coffee. They are totally exhausted after giving so much fruit. So I gave the remedy China to the coffee. They were indeed exhausted. For you who are interested, the remedy is China. And the bushes they had recovered in 2 days. They were back to normal. So there's a lot that we can do with remedies. The other issue that we can treat very easily is different weather conditions. And I think that in this crazy world that we live in at the moment with climate change and everything, we're getting very extreme weather conditions. Like this summer in Europe was incredibly hot and dry. And with homeopathic remedies, we can build the heat resistance, for example, of the plants. So for these different conditions, for heat, for frost, for drought, for too much rain, waterlogging, the roots not being able to breathe, for all of this, we have remedies. There's another research that was done in India where they used silica, dulcamara, and sulfur for drought, and they got really good results in improving germination and growth. The next thing that I want to talk about is insect infestations. So, of course, our gardens are going to be full of insects, and we need insects, right? But we don't want them to be eating all of our crop. So we can really have an effect on this. We can use well-known homeopathic remedies against insects, which is probably one way. So we can use remedies like ledum, sabadilla, staphysagria, etc., etc. And then we can use a technique called isopathy, which is homeopathy means like with like. Isopathy means treatment with the same, not with similar, with the same thing. So if you have an infestation of snails, you put homeopathic snail over your garden and the snails will go away. So those of you who are homeopaths and know how to make remedies, you can do this yourself. You can catch the bug that is bothering you. You can catch it and you can make it into a remedy. Or you can just order it from your homeopathic pharmacy. This is a system that is very largely practiced, for example, in Brazil, in their permaculture farming. The other method is to use natural enemies, biopesticides. So the idea is that we have insect infestation and we bring in another insect that will eat the infesting insects. So, for example, we will bring in ladybugs to eat. In homeopathy, it's called coccinella. So we bring them in to eat aphids, for example. They love aphids. So in biodynamic gardening, a lot of people, they bring in masses and masses of ladybugs, kilograms and kilograms and boxes full of them. They let them loose in the garden. And I think the homeopathic way is a bit more friendly. It's more cheap. It's a bit more civilized, sophisticated. Also, it's less disruptive. Let's say it doesn't work. Let's say the coccinella doesn't work. It's no big deal. We choose a different remedy. But if you bring in masses of ladybugs or some other insect, there's always going to be repercussions, because it's a balance that we have in the garden and in nature. And whenever you bring in something in large scale, you're going to have a reaction to it, right? So coccinella is used against aphids. My favorite remedy against aphids is simicifuga. So those of you who love roses and who have aphids, simicifuga does the trick. They just completely disappear. And if they come back, you repeat the remedy. And if they come back a third time, you give a dose of sulfur. Sulfur finishes it off. But this is kind of like acute treatment and then chronic treatment. Here is a nice story about bird cherry ermine, which is a disgusting moth well, the moth is not so disgusting, but what it did to my mother's apple tree was pretty gross. So here we have a situation, you can see the amount of caterpillars. They come and they eat up the whole tree. And there's nothing that can be done. Not chemical, not nothing. I mean, the only advice that is given is to spray it with a really, really strong garden spray. And then maybe the net, the thing will fall, off. But it's not very successful. And, if you have a huge tree, you can't do it. So basically, very often the tree survives somehow, but the end result is horrendous. They can end up looking like this. They do end up looking like this because there's nothing stopping it. Once it starts, and this white stuff, it looks like from a Halloween house, from a haunted house. It's like white and sticky. You can't, you're pulling it off, and it's hard to pull it off. It's absolutely disgusting. So my mom, she phones me and she says, and this is her apple tree, the apple tree in her garden on the patio that, is the key feature of the whole little garden. She was absolutely, of course, freaking out. And I said to Jeremy, my husband, I said, if you have a brain wave, now is a really good time for it. I had never treated this before in my life. And indeed, he had a brain wave, and he gave it a remedy, and it recovered fully. So my mom gave the remedy on a Thursday, went away for the weekend, came home on Monday, and already saw the difference in the tree. And after that, the issue just completely disappeared. So good stuff, very good stuff. Another place where we can use homeopathy is in all sorts of injuries to the plants, trauma, So it can be from when the plants are, for example, transplanted from the nursery into the field, or when you're repotting the plants. And then often, the plant can look very miserable, and this damage to the roots, and sometimes they don't recover, or it takes a very long time to recover. And in these situations, simply arnica, aconite, fantastic remedies, and will absolutely do the trick very, very fast. You will see the results too. And also you can have other injuries in the garden, like, for example, in Finland, I'm from Finland, last winter, there was so much snow that it was hanging very, very, very heavily on the branches of the trees. And then after the snowfall, there was a huge snowfall. It was like -15 for a long time. So it all froze onto the branches. So it became very, very heavy. So there were lots of cracked, broken branches in nature everywhere, in people's gardens, in the woods. And arnica in those situations is absolutely brilliant. The other thing that we can treat is viral, bacterial, and fungal diseases. Now, sometimes it's difficult to know what it is, what's going on, because sometimes they look very similar. But lucky with homeopathy, we don't need a diagnosis. It's very much like when we treat human beings, we go by what we can see and what we can feel and ask questions, and we go by sensations and functions and people's descriptions about how they feel and how whatever is wrong with them affects them. So that's when I was telling you about individual treatment, that two people with diabetes would get different remedies. It's very similar with plants. Plants can't talk, so we just look at them and observe what is happening. So sometimes we know the name of the disease, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes it's helpful, and other times it's not helpful at all. Regardless, we have good results. These are all from roses. So we were treating, for example, this black spot very successfully with homeopathy, and black tip of roses, and excellent results, and got rid of these infectations, whatever diseases, with homeopathic remedies. Here is one research about tomato leaf curl virus that is a really annoying virus. It really cuts down the yield of the crop. So in India, they did a study. They give prophylactically Serinum 30 to tomato plants, and they found a result that the yield with the Serinum, even before, this is before there were any signs or symptoms of this leaf curl virus. They found that they had a yield that was 42.6% greater than in the control group. And they measured things like ascorbic acid, and they saw that that was 12.4% more. And they saw that there was a over 30% reduction in the viral load than in the control group. So very, very amazing results. It's great to be experimenting with plants and seeds because we don't need ethical approval or anything like that. And it's very easy to measure and see what is going on. Okay. Good. And here, I've been teaching this agri-homeopathy course. It's a series of 6 webinars. And just yesterday, we had a session, and one of the participants told us about one of her successes. So she wanted to tell about her grapevines, and she said that it's simply unbelievable, and even an experienced wine grower was more than amazed. So what happened is that they came back home from holiday on the 21st of July, and 2 of their vines were completely diseased. Her husband has worked with his parents in viticulture for many years and says that it's nothing's working more. And some of the berries were shriveled, they had black and gray spots, and it really looked like the harvest was ruined. And you can see here in the photo, you can see how some of the grapes are totally shriveled up and black. In viticulture, they use something called copper vitriol for all sorts of fungal diseases. And essentially it is a copper sulfate. As I didn't have this homeopathically, I combined sulfur and cuprum. On the 22nd of July, I dissolved sulfate D30 and cuprum metallicum D12, 5 globules of each in a 250 ml spray bottle, and I sprayed the plants with it. I cut off the grapes that were already massively affected to give the vine the strength it needs to heal, and I also watered them, of course, which was necessary with the temperatures of over 30 degrees. Here is the copper sulfate treatment that is normally given, and this has been used to fight fungus and bacteria that threaten the vines, since the 1880s. So this is supposed to be like a slightly more, slightly more organic or acceptable way to treat the plants. It's still copper sulfate, right? And the sulfate in these is usually what gives people hangovers and headaches. So, my husband, for example, he suffers terribly from especially in red wine. He gets almost like he's allergic to it. And when we use, there are things like wine filters. It's like a tea bag, and you put it in a what's it called? You put it in something, you pour the wine through it, and then it takes the sulfates out, and then he doesn't get affected by it. So, it has its issues and its problems, this copper sulfate treatment. So now she replaced it with a homeopathic formula, and she says that already after a few days, you could see the change. And today, the 7th of August, the healing can be seen so clearly. Most of the affected berries have regenerated, and the others have died and are now hanging scrawny next to the healthy berries. And we can now already start harvesting. So she was absolutely blown over by the result, and so was her husband. At the last seminar, I also reported blistering on the vine leaves on another vine, which I had also sprayed with sulfur and coprum in the course of this action. The leaves didn't die as they usually do, and the blisters didn't return. And in the greenhouse, I sprayed all the plants with silica in the spring. I have never had so many tomatoes. There are so many hanging on that you have to support some of the ox hearts. That's the type of the tomato. One tomato was 16 centimeters long and 9 centimeters thick. Now, and this is what we see in gardens that we treat with homeopathic remedies. We see massively bigger and better produce. For example, I treated basil, and the basil leaves, not only did the disease go away, but the basil leaves became like the size of the palm. So that's pretty amazing. And silica is a homeopathic remedy that I recommend for you to just use for your garden, never mind what. Just give it silica at the beginning of the growing season, and boom, you will see fabulous, fabulous effects. It's a very simple thing that anyone can do in their garden. So here are the before and after pictures of the grapevine. Happy days. So we can see that with agro-homeopathy, we can get better growth, better yield, more flowers. We can correct the soil deficiencies, and we can use it in conversion from regular chemical to organic farming, which is very, very, very tricky to do. So, if we can replace even some of the insecticides, pesticides, fungicides with homeopathy, then we will have a cleaner environment, we will have cleaner food, it will reduce the cost of the farming, and it will create a much more sustainable gardening practice. And this is how we can save the earth. I'm going to be starting a new agri-homeopathy course starting on the 16th of October. Here is the QR code for that, if you're interested. And here is a remedy kit that I designed for plants and gardens and farms. Okay, so they are remedy mixtures. They are not single remedies. If you're a homeopath, you can use single remedies. But if you don't know homeopathy, it's almost very difficult. So these are combination remedies for all sorts of different situations in your garden. So for example, there's a product for weak, stunted plants. Those plants that are kind of like miserable and they just don't grow, or they are exhausted, like those coffee plants were after the overbearing. So for some reason, you just have weak plants that aren't growing. Then you use the plant tonic. You can see the remedies underneath each product. There's another great product. It's called Grow Well. And this is this will give your plants all the nutrients that they need for maximizing the growth. Recover is for after injury or repotting or transplanting, like I told you before. One is called Bloom, that will give maximum flowering. It has arnica and phosphorus in it. Then there's a product called Rooted, which is meant for soaking your seeds before you plant them. So this is to make the root growth better and for them to be more resistant against fungal infections. The remedies are based on that one research I showed you. Balanced soil is what you want to treat the soil itself. When you have analyzed your soil and you know what it's missing, you can just add this product. You can actually, if you analyze the soil, you can make your own mixture. So if you know that in your area of Europe, you have a very calcium-rich soil, but you don't have enough nitrogen, for example, then you know what to do, which remedies to add based on that. This one, balanced soil, is an overall, it has like got the whole whack. If you don't know, or if you just have such a small garden that you don't really care. So this is safe to put in without any adverse effects. Then we have two insect repellents, Insectaway Acute and Insectaway Chronic. So the idea is that you use the acute one for the acute infestation. So whatever you've got, fruit flies, cabbage flies, there's a million of those. You can use the acute one. And then, at the end of the season, you use the chronic. And this one is a so-called antisoric. Those are antisoric remedies. Those of you who are homeopaths will understand the concept, but it doesn't matter. Basically, what it does is it's deeper acting treatments so that your plants will be much more resistant next year to those bugs. So, for example, my roses that were absolutely full of aphids, I gave them Simicifuga. The aphids went away. 3 weeks later, the aphids came back and I repeated the treatment. And again, they went away for 3 weeks. And then it was already like August or something. I saw that a few came back, not so many, but there were still a few. And that's when I gave the sulfa. And the year after, nothing, nada, not one single aphid, and they haven't returned. This is now 3-4 years ago. Seedlings is a great product for your tiny little seedlings. When they're all floppy and little and they kind of need support. So we know that arnica promotes root growth and silica is what gives plants their grit. Silica is what lifts up the grass. When you step on grass and it goes flat, silica is what helps the plant rise back up again. So, and silica is also a substance that will make the plant more able to take in all the nutrients from the earth. It's a great product. Too hot is for heat damage, for too much sun, and this will make your plants more heat resistant. So this is great to do during the actual hot season. And frozen is for frost damage. So you've planted your things out too early in the spring, for example, boom, there's a frost. This happens especially in countries like Finland. You already think, oh my God, it's wonderful, and you're already in your bikinis, and suddenly there's a hailstorm or a freezing cold night. So aconite, veratrum, borax, those are all remedies that are great for those kind of situations where your plants suddenly freeze. So this will help them recover. Fungicide is to treat fungal infestations, and NPK is simply nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in homeopathic form. These are the macronutrients, the basic building blocks that every plant needs. So that's what is in the box. Just this morning, a friend of mine here in Tanzania sent me a WhatsApp, and she said, "Oh, Camilla, I forgot to tell you, I've been using your Grow Well product, and it's been absolutely amazing for our plants. Incredibly good. We had lots of new plants and some of them struggling to get established. We used it on all of them, a spray on everything 2 weeks apart, and the difference is amazing." So it's great to get good feedback. Other references for research, if any of you is that way inclined and wants to have a look and wants to check what was done and what was achieved. And yeah, thank you very much for listening and for being excited. And here are my details if you're interested. And I hope to hear from you with your experiences or your questions or whatever you have in order to I don't know, to work together or to cooperate, or you know, because this is something that needs to be taken further. You know, it needs to be researched more. It needs to be tried out more. It needs to be checked. A lot of people need to use it, and I hope that this gives you a little bit of inspiration to look into it and to start using homeopathy, not only for yourself and for your animals and your pets and your cats and your dogs and your children, but also for your plants and your tomatoes and your garden and your flowers.
Oh, thank you so much, Camilla. That was really, really interesting. We've got some questions, if that's okay. And one of the questions, well, I know that homeopathy comes in a little pill form. You can get it as drops, but generally it comes in pill form. So would you just put one pill in a watering can, or would you dilute it with a 50 millimeter spray and spray? How would you actually get it onto your plants?
So I wouldn't use a watering can, Sally, simply because once you put a remedy in your watering can, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So you would have to wash it in boiling water and stuff like that. So what I do is, where do I have one here? I have small little spray bottles, okay? I ordered like 20 in a bulk. And then I've got labels. And what I do is I make a small bottle that's enough for your home garden. You know, you make a small bottle, you put water, and you put one pill, 2 pills of the remedy in there. You shake it and you spray. And now you don't have to cover the whole plant in the remedy at all. It's completely enough to just get a few drops on it. And if you want to treat the soil, then you want the remedy to go into the soil. But if you're treating the plant, you know, against insects or you know, almost anything else, you can just spray it on the leaves. And honestly, a few drops is enough. I once walked all over this field, sunflower field, that was all the sunflowers were being eaten by this really nasty, like a beetle, that black beetle that just comes and sits in the sunflower and just munches away. And it was an organic sunflowers field. So there was nothing they could do. So I went around with the dropper bottle and literally gave 2 drops to each sunflower. It took me hours. And the next day, all the beetles just went away. They just, I don't know, they went to the neighbors. I don't know where they went, but they disappeared. So
I was interesting because I was wondering, you know, do they die or do they just go, this isn't tasty anymore?
yeah, it's more like this isn't tasty anymore, because the plant, you see, once its immunity is working, the plant has ways of fighting all those creepy crawlies. Like even that apple tree that I showed you, my mom's apple tree. What happens is that when that kind of a moth is around, apparently the trees, they talk to each other and they message each other that there is, that this thing is, in the neighborhood, watch out. And then all the trees start to produce this kind of a something bitter that makes the leaves not taste good. So plants have a million ways of fighting back, just like us humans have. So what happens with a homeopathic treatment is the same thing as happens with people. Ultimately, the immune system gets stronger and fights back more effectively. So when it starts to whatever it does, I mean, we know so little. We don't know what a sunflower does exactly, and why or what happens. But the end result is that they go to somewhere else where where the sunflowers, aren't fighting back or taste better or whatever it is.
And I noticed that you use 6C and 12C a lot. And for treating myself, I would usually use 30 or 200. So does the potency make a huge amount of difference?
I don't know. For example, the apple tree, I gave it just one dose of 200C.
What did you give
of the remedy? Lacaninum.
Lacaninum. What is lacaninum?
Which is lacaninum is actually made from dog's milk.
Okay.
And it's a very homeopathic prescription, because lacaninum has a delusion of being surrounded by snakes. And that's what it looks like when those maggots are all around. And the remedy has this kind of a very disgusted feeling, which is what is the feeling when you look at that apple tree, you just go, oh, it's absolutely gross. And I'm sure the apple tree feels the same way. Can you imagine? So lacaninum, it was a very high-level homeopathic prescription, which, I don't expect a lot of people to be able to do that. But luckily, we can treat on, in many different ways. So I would say that when you treat the soil, like, for example, when you're balancing out the soil, I like using lower potencies, because we're putting a lot of different substances in, and we want to have the change on a more material level in a way. So it sits with me better to use lower potencies. But I have to say that in my garden, I use everything. If I happen to have, I use a lot of 30s. I also use 200s, whatever I happen to have in my cupboard. I see a problem, I want to treat it. I've got a 200, I give it 200. So it's a little bit like with humans, Sally. It's difficult to say how the potencies, some people say, oh, the higher the potency, the more mental, emotional, or spiritual the effect is. And the lower it is, the more physical the effect is. But this is not true. And I know it because I have proved over 30 remedies. So I know that 12C has a very strong mental, emotional component. What it is that the higher the potency, the more intense the effect is. So yeah, so it's a bit more mild. The effect is more mild on the lower potencies.
Yeah. And I think we've got time for just one more question, because it's an important question. And I think, not everybody is familiar with homeopathy. And you can make a homeopathic remedy out of anything. And I think people just think, oh, maybe it's a plant or a herb. but I think I was once prescribed drainage and also Berlin Wall. So can you explain a bit about how you can make a homeopathy out of absolutely anything? So like you just said, dog's milk.
Yeah. So yes. How to explain it? So for example, let's take something. I mean, the process of potentization is a way of making a homeopathic remedy, and it's true. You can take anything and turn it into a remedy, and somehow, you know, you grind the substance first in a mortar and pestle, and you grind it, and then you start mixing it with lactose powder. Then you take one part out, and you do this kind of a trituration for a while. If it's a solid substance, then you start to mix it with liquid, and you succuss it very, very strongly in between, and then you dilute. So it's a process where the essence of what dog milk is about just starts to make itself known. And this is what the proving is, where people write down all the symptoms that they get when they take this remedy in large quantities in order to produce symptoms. So what it can cause, it can cure. So if when I take dog's milk, I start to feel all disgusted with myself, and I have dreams of snakes all around me, in and out of me, and blah, and I normally never have that, then I know that these are symptoms from that remedy, from that proving, and that these symptoms that it can cause in a healthy person, it can cure in somebody who already has those symptoms. So that's the principle of homeopathy. That's how everything is done. So for example, Berlin Wall, this is more esoteric. You know, you take a piece of a wall that is symbolic and has some kind of it has a meaning and it has an energy to it, just like everything does. You know, if we go far enough, everything, you know, is alive on some level. Everything has its own energy. You know, people talk to their cars. They have names for their cars. They said, please don't fall apart now. We are almost at home, and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, we can, I don't know if this is true or not, but certainly when we do a kind of we take a substance like the Berlin Wall, and we get themes, mental, emotional symptoms that are connected with the split of a country into two, that are connected with the uprootedness, with the grief, with the fear, with all the mental, emotional aspects that this division brought up in those people who were affected by it. So the wall, I don't know how. No one knows how. I don't know, Sally. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? You know, it's the stuff that we don't understand. You know, this world is so fascinating. There are so many things that we can't actually explain. And, you know, not so many hundreds of years ago, they said that the earth is a pancake, and it was against science to say that it was a ball. You know, people were burnt because they said it's not a pancake. And you know, they say that today's magic is tomorrow's science. So maybe that's how it is with homeopathy as well. Up till now.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that's a really, really good note to end on.
Yes.
When I come and visit you in Tanzania,
Moshi.
I am definitely in Moshi. I'm going to definitely pick up one of those kits.
Well, I don't have the kits in Moshi, actually. The kits are in Germany. They are produced by a German pharmacy. Yeah. So you can order them online. Yeah. I haven't even seen them. Yeah.
Oh, well, next time I'm in Europe, I'll get two and I'll bring one back for you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
you
Well,
so
thanks
much.
very much, Sally.
Thank you, Camilla. That was really, really interesting. And we'll see you soon. And if you would like to share your PowerPoint with us, we could put it on our YouTube channel so that if anybody missed any of the talk and they want to catch up, that would be great.
Yes.
All right. Thanks
No
very
problem
much.
at all. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Sally, and have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Take care.
Bye.
So we're going to just take a break now. You can see the wind's got up here. And when we come back, I'm really looking forward to hearing Siobhan Ford. She has opened a herbal remedy shop in Dar es Salaam. She's originally from the US. So we're going to hear all about how she treats women's issues like endometriosis and fibroids. So we'll see you at 1:45. Take care.